Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnanam Jana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha.
Prahlad Maharaj makes a similar statement. Sukham Aindriyakam Dadya Deha Yogena Dehinam Sarvatra Labhyate Daiva Yata Dukham Ayatnataha. Addressing the daityas, the demon young boys, he said that happiness, especially that measured in terms of that which is in relationship to the senses, that comes automatically. When you get a body, just by the very virtue of having a body, then some happiness is inbuilt. Even in a hellish situation, there is also happiness. That those in a hellish situation actually gain some kind of pleasure. Actually, it's a hellish, tortured kind of pleasure, but they actually find some enjoyment in that. Just like you see, some people, they like techno rock. You know what that is? Techno rock music. I found out. I attended a concert all night. I didn't plan on it, but it just happened to be going on outside the apartment I was in once in Belgrade and Serbia. So it sounds like someone hammering on your head. And the hellish screams that accompanied it from those who were enjoying it spoke of the caliber of the people who like to listen to such music. Even a worm in stool finds pleasure. If we were to throw someone, human being, most of them, into stool, they would not think this is a very nice thing. And if we told them that you have to eat it also, that would be even worse. But the worm in stool thinks, this is very nice. Nice stool. Comfortable living here. And it tastes very nice. Superb. And that is proof that if you take the worm away from the stool, he'll crawl back. At the sewage works, if a worker falls into the pit of stool, then he'll be very grateful if someone helps him to get up. But the worm in stool will feel very offended and disturbed if you take him out of it. So what he sees as happiness, we see as distress. Similarly, there are some people who inflict torture upon themselves and consider it very nice. Masochism, they beat themselves.
Называется.
Lacerate their bodies with a whip. They consider it pleasurable. This is murder. So, according to the consciousness, one gets different kinds of experiences. According to the body, one receives certain kinds of experiences. And according to the consciousness, we find these experiences enjoyable or distressing. It's like I'm a human being and the others at that techno rock concert were supposedly also human beings. But what I found to be unpleasant, they thought, this is great, this is wonderful, this is very nice. So, sukh and dukh, happiness and distress, are there, they come with the body. The living being is always experiencing various degrees of happiness and distress. That comes with the body, according to one's previous karma. His future happiness and distress is to a large extent fixed. I say to a large extent because what we do in this life also creates new karmic reactions that may start to fructify even within this life. For instance, it's not that it's all fixed by destiny. So much is fixed by destiny, but by one's actions, one can influence the course of one's life also. For instance, as Lord Krishna states in Bhagavad-gita, by worshipping demigods, one can quickly achieve material happiness. Kam shanta karmanam siddhim yajanta iha devataha. Persons who are desirous of material happiness here in this material world, they worship various demigods. Shipramhi karmanam siddhim. And quickly one can achieve the results. So people are attached to this demigod worship because it works. If you do demigod worship, you can achieve results. You can achieve, according to the manner in which you perform it and how much the various demigod favors you, you can achieve wealth, fame, or various material benedictions. However, even though the demigods may award benedictions, it is not possible even for them to award you benedictions that will award only happiness and not also distress. Because that is the very nature of this material world, that with material so-called happiness is inbuilt distress. For instance, one may attain the happiness of getting a lot of money. But inbuilt with that is the distress of being separated from it. Because one cannot remain in possession of that money. One will either lose it within this lifetime, or at death he will suffer the pain of being forcefully detached from that money. So although here and in various places in Shastra it is spoken, it is mentioned how one can achieve happiness and distress in this material world.
Only happiness or happiness and distress?
Happiness and distress. But actually the term material happiness, it is a conventional usage. Because the inherent nature of this material world, Krishna has defined as dukkhalayam. It is a place of distress. To give a rather figurative story, which I heard before coming to Krishna consciousness. It's a funny little joke, you can say. That a man was sent to hell and he was given a choice of which hell he could go in. So in one, he saw the people being whipped. In another, he saw them being stoned. Stones thrown. In another, he saw them having to walk through all forest full of thorns and have their skin all torn.
Колючками и шипами.
And then he saw one in which people were standing in stool, holding cups of tea and drinking. So, well, this looks better than the others, I think I'll go here. Then the supervisor, the Yamadutta, came and said, okay, that's your once every 1,000 years tea break over. Everyone get back on their heads. That's the supervisor.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yeah. No, the last phrase that everyone gets on.
Everyone get back on your head. Stand, you have to stand on your head. They stand on the stool.
Right? I see.
So there may be a little happiness, so-called happiness, but the basic nature of this material world is that it is full of distress. And just like this Prahlad Maharaj, Sukham Aindriyakam Dharta, he says that the happiness of this material world is only that of the interaction of the senses with their sense objects. It is a kind of sensation that takes our attention away from the distress that we are feeling in our hearts. You know what? You have this tiger balm here in this country. They use tiger balm. If you get a headache, you put this on your forehead.
Золотая звездочка.
Did anyone ever use that? I use it quite often. So what is the effect of using that? I usually get a headache in my forehead here. So the effect of using that, it gives a kind of stinging sensation which is less severe, slightly less severe than a headache. So you cover one kind of pain with another kind of pain, and it seems to give some kind of relief. So like that, in the material world, we seek sense gratification as a diversion away from the deep distress. It covers over the distress which we feel in the core of our hearts. This is especially prominent in modern society, especially in the fast-moving cities of the West, like London and New York, where everyone is doing something all the time. There's not a moment to waste. Everyone is very busy, going from one experience to the next. And neon lights flashing here and there, and some music playing out of the shop somewhere else. Buy this, the advertisement says. Go there, go visit Puerto Rico. And in Puerto Rico there's a sign, go visit New York. So it's constant titillation of the senses. You should always have some music playing in here, and always some sense gratification for the tongue. Constant. So they're always taking some soft drink, or some hard drink, or some chewing gum, or all the time there's smoking. All the time they want some titillation for their taste buds. They have this radio shows with the DJs playing music, and they put on the music. Then when it's coming to end, the guy comes in and says, blah, 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 talks very quickly, and then another one comes in before he finished speaking, and he talks in a falsely happy voice, and whatever he says has no meaning. And that was a really wonderful song from Bob Dylan. Now we're going to give you another one. So it's a false euphoria. And to enhance this feeling of euphoria, many people they take intoxication, or they become very interested in sex, which is another euphoric sensation. So like this, going from one apparent euphoria to another, people just try to cover up the distress which they feel in their hearts. We see especially that people, they're more inclined to become drug addicts or sexual perverts if they don't have any basic satisfaction in their lives. Especially if they don't have any feelings of love at home, then they tend to become very lusty and sexually perverted, because they're trying to make up for the actual feeling of satisfaction that could come from some meaningful relationships. They're trying to acquire that by force, by sexual gratification. If we analyze just a little bit below the surface, we can see that actually everyone is miserable. Just below the surface, everyone is screaming inside. Even most people seem to be just leading some kind of ordinary life. And they seem to be just going on with life more or less, and no major problem. But everyone is playing a charade. They're pretending to be the kind of person that other people expect them to be, that society demands that they be. They act in a certain way, and even have trained themselves to think in a certain way, because they are culturally conditioned in that way. They have adopted an identity that has been given to them by the culture they were brought up in. And they're so much disconnected from their real self that they take this identity that they have adopted to be real. But they're totally disaccustomed to going deep into their hearts to find out who is there. They don't know themselves. There's this term, self-realization. The self-realization, the culture of self-realization is considered to be a very high spiritual platform. This means that most people, who are not interested in self-realization, they don't know who their self is. They have not realized who they actually are. If it is accepted that self-realization is a very high culture, higher than that of which the ordinary man follows, then we can conclude that the ordinary man is completely out of touch with his self. That's one reason why these fashions become popular. People dress in different clothes according to the fashion. Because people tend to judge you according to the clothes you wear. So people like to project themselves according to the latest different fashions. That yes, I am also following this fashion. And this is also me, I am like this. And they dress in various ways to project their personality, but actually they themselves do not know who they are. If you dress with, say you make your hair all yellow and green and sticking out in different directions, then people can understand that this is, what are they called, punk rockers or something like that. Maybe that's another big term.
Yeah.
So, or if someone has a little bit long hair with a bit of a beard and a kind of serious look, you can understand this is an intellectual, probably a poet. So, like this, people, their dress is supposed to give some indication of their identity. So people adopt different kinds of identities that they feel themselves attracted to. Someone dresses as a businessman with a suit and tie. Someone puts tattoos on his body to show I'm a tough guy. So like this, people adopt different kinds of identities which are offered to them by society. And some of them they try to show that I am different. Just like when this first came out, this thing of having all different colored hair in all different directions, that was considered something really different. But now it's normal. So people adopt different supposed identities. But these projected identities are all simply different permutations of the same materialistic identity that everyone has. Everyone in this material world is posing themselves as Ishvaraham Aham Bhogi. I am the controller and I am the enjoyer. Due to forgetting or deliberately rejecting their relationship with Krishna, they are forced to suffer in this material world. So Prabhupada wrote in this 6th canto, in our Krishna conscious movement, we do not indulge in whimsical fashions, changing our clothes every day, changing our clothing style every day. We change our clothes every day, but not our clothing style. Prabhupada wrote that in our Krishna conscious movement we have one fashion: shaved head with tilak, neck beads, and dhotis. Of course, he didn't mention the saris, but that's understood. In this we state, this is our identity.
He stays or?
By wearing this, we state this is our identity. We no longer project ourselves to be businessmen or hooligans or any such identity of this material world. But we simply want to identify ourselves as the eternal servants of Krishna. This is the only situation by which one can get freed from the so-called happiness and certain distress of this material world. Of course, a devotee also goes through various kinds of situations. That every one of us, we can expect that we will be subject in future, maybe today or after some days, to some distressing situations. And also there will be some situations which will be a cause of pleasure. All the time we're experiencing pleasure and distress, in varying degrees. Just like we may get some minor distress that someone accidentally treads on our foot, and it's not very painful, and it's not a very big thing, we don't take much notice of it. But then there may be some highly distressing situations. A loved one passes away, or we have some actual bodily injury. Similarly, there may be some minor cause of happiness and some major cause of happiness. But a devotee is advised that on the platform of transcendental knowledge, not to be affected by the dualities of this material world. The devotee is always advised to have a philosophical outlook. Even Balaram told this to Rukmini Devi when she was experiencing some distress. Rukmini Devi can never experience any material distress because she's not a product of this material world. And especially when she's in the presence of Krishna, she's always happy. And she was very happy when Krishna came and kidnapped her. She was in so much anxiety that I'm going to have to get married to this jerk Shishupal. I hate him. And she was hoping that Krishna will come and take me. And her apprehension of distress turned into great bliss. But it just so happened that shortly after that, Krishna insulted her brother.
Но так случилось.
Severely. Of course, he deserved it. But Krishna happened to give him a punk-style haircut.
О, да, из рук мне. Yes.
So, that was very embarrassing for him. How could he go back to the city and say that, I didn't manage to get my sister back, so instead I decided to become a punk rocker. So Rukmini, feeling empathy with him, was feeling distressed. Even though she was in the presence of Krishna, and she was very blissful because she had just been saved by Krishna from being married to Shishupala, and her long-standing wish was fulfilled. But even in that situation, on behalf of her brother, in relationship to her brother, she was feeling some distress. So then up came Balaram, he came up a little late because he was dealing with all the others, all the armies and this and that, finishing them off. So Balaram was expert in placating people and diplomatic dealings.
Placating means peaceful.
Placating means pacifying. So Balaram told Rukmini, he gave her a philosophical lecture. He told her, you have to see everything philosophically. You should see the world with a philosophical outlook. There's no need to be overly happy or overly distressed in any situation, because we should simply see in every situation that everyone is simply getting the result of their previous activities. And as a dutiful elder brother, he chastised his younger brother a little bit. Of course, later he did to Rukmini what he gave Rukmini what he really deserved, namely a club on the head. But this advice is perfect advice for all devotees. That we should see everything, we should see this world with a philosophical outlook. That's why for our day-to-day living in this material world, the Bhagavad-gita is you get the best instruction in Bhagavad-gita. Bhagavad-gita gives us all advice how to live in this world and not be affected by its tumultuous conditions. Bhagavad-gita teaches us how to live in a bewildering world and not be bewildered. So this instruction, or these instructions that are being given in this section of Bhagavatam, they resemble what are sometimes called the very basic teachings of Bhagavad-gita. So it may seem like a very basic topic. But actually, it's very good to hear these basic topics. Of course, we may also go on to more what we could call more philosophically developed topics, or the intricacies of devotional philosophy. But it is also very good to regularly study Bhagavad-gita as it is, to keep fresh in our minds this very basic understanding that can help us to live equably in this miserable material world. Because this material world is always presenting us with various kinds of distresses and disturbances. So by regularly studying this philosophy, that everything here is temporary, this material world is by nature distressing, and so on.
By regularly discussing.
By regularly studying this philosophy, that everything here is temporary, this material world is by nature full of distresses, and so on. Then we can remain equipoised in situations which would otherwise cause us to become disturbed. Yasmin sthito nadupena gurunapi vichayate. In Bhagavad-gita, Krishna speaks of the self-realized person who remains equipoised even in very trying circumstances. So if we are not fixed in this knowledge, then we will be carried away by the waves of Maya and affected by attachment in this material world. So it is very important that we maintain this philosophical understanding that we are actually not products of this material world. That the effects of material nature, although they appear to affect us, ultimately they do not. This is the basic platform on which we can practice spiritual life. Is there any question? It's, as we say, it's basic topics. So probably we all at least theoretically understand this principle. Nevertheless, we should discuss this from time to time, especially as it comes up in Shastra again and again and again. There's a question now, what is that?
In the Prabhupada it was mentioned that Durga Devi creates, maintains and destroys all material universes. So how does she maintain them? By which qualities?
Well, it doesn't exactly state that in the English version of the Prabhupada.
No, but,
maybe he misheard it. In Russian also. Here it's stated that she can create and maintain and annihilate any number of universes. It doesn't say that she actually does. It's the same in Russian?
No, in Russian it said he does.
She does.
She creates.
But in Brahma Samhita.
No, it's a translation of Brahma Samhita. Shrishti Sthiti Pralaya. Anyway, Prabhupada may translate it like that somewhere, but here he has written she can create. In this particular purport, Prabhupada has translated it like this. And then Prabhupada goes on to say that she acts under the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, not independently. So even for the sake of argument, if it said that she maintains, she does so under the order of Krishna.
By Krishna's order.
Taking power from Krishna. She is known as Shakti. She is the personification of the material energy. She is dependent upon Shaktiman, or the possessor of the energy named Krishna. There's a difference in the translation. It's a slight difference. We should actually correct that. And Prabhupada, he gave these words very specifically. You maybe make a note of that. It could be changed. You want to make a note and refer to the BPT.
As it is known in advance from the very beginning how much pleasures and how much sufferings one will have during his lifetime, and it is also known his lifespan. His lifespan is also fixed. So can a devotee behave like a fatalist and sometimes risk his life and act without taking care and something like this?
And do you ask it in Russian?
Yes.
It is known, but who knows? You want to go to an astrologer and find out? Astrology gives some indication. Even if you go to the best astrologer, he cannot say exactly what will happen in our life. Because as I was saying in the class, everything that we do also creates new karmic reactions which may start to fructify even within this life. There are many different things that can alter the course of our lives. For instance, if we come in association with devotees, as Prabhupada said, all the lines on your hand change. But if you insult devotees, then all your fame, opulence, lifespan, everything is quickly destroyed. Or even we may come in contact with someone who has a very powerful karma that affects us. For instance, a friend of mine, devotee, is a competent astrologer, and one of his clients died at a young age. So he checked through his whole chart, and because he wasn't expecting this, he checked it very thoroughly and went into all the different nuances, but he couldn't find any indication of an early death. Then he had some, how do you call that, some insight or what's the word? I can't remember exactly. Some idea to look at his wife's chart. So he found in that, in his wife's chart, that she would become an early widow. So by the power of her chart, then his became overruled. So when we say that one's karma is fixed, that is a general indication, but it may happen that we come into association with others who have very powerful karma that affects our karma. Prabhupada said that when he had the heart attacks when he was sailing from India to America, actually that was supposed to be his time finished. But Krishna gave him some extra time over his allowance. Thank you very much, our dear Lord Krishna. Now we shouldn't think that, well, you know, the astrologer told me I'll live to be 92, so I'm going to drive this car at 180 kilometers an hour. Sometimes I said to a devotee that, well, don't drive so close. He said, it doesn't matter, we already said the Nrsimha Pranam, so you can just drive so as if Lord Nrsimha is supposed to, he's obliged to compensate for your foolishness. Karma works like this. If you act like a fool, you get the result of a fool. You may get the result very quickly. And after that, there won't be any more time to discuss all these philosophical topics. Hare Krishna. More question?
In the ninth chapter of Bhagavad-gita, in one of the purports, Srila Prabhupada says that devotees, they concentrate on chanting the name of Krishna, not other names, but the name of Krishna. And then the next purport, he says that Mahatmas, they are worshipping Vishnu and they are chanting names of Vishnu. So how to reconcile this point? Yes.
So, different statements in Shastra may refer to or be meant for different people. Dhruva Maharaj is a great devotee. He saw the Vishnu form of the Lord. In the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, especially, we concentrate on worshipping the original form of Vishnu, Krishna. It doesn't mean that others who worship other forms of the Lord are not Mahatmas. Okay, we kind of got off the topic there.
Немножко.
One last question.
So it is said that of all anarthas, pride.
Is this connected with we're going away from the
No, it's not connected with the topic of the class. It's a different topic.
Yeah, okay, I think I'll leave it then.
Yes.